episode of Random Lit. I'm going to talk to you about a weird old book. As old and it's weird, and so that qualifies for that. So I just read Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival, and I really struggled with this book. I don't know if it almost killed this project or not because I really enjoy this book, but it took a long time to kind of process how to approach the book. So I just started reading the introduction to this version. Don't know anything about this. I've kind of heard the name Parzival before. I'm not sure where that's from. I'm not well versed in the Arthurian legends. Like Sword in the Stone, like the Disney movie, and that sort of thing. And so anyways, I start reading the introduction, and it seems like this is a retelling of Chretein of Troyes, Parzival, or the story of the Holy Grail. And so, what I understand from the brief portion of the introduction I read from Eschenbach, I was like, well, if this is a retelling, then I should read the first one. So I got Chretein of Troyes, Arthurian Romances. There's a Penguin edition of that. Do I have that with me? I don't have it near. Okay, so, but I didn't read all of it. So I thought, apparently Chretein of Troyes died before being able to complete the Parzival story. And so I thought it might be best to read that beforehand and then just take off where Van Eschenbach is going. And I'm glad that I did that because it was very clear what Van Eschenbach was doing the entire time. He loved this story of Chretein of Troyes, and was doing homage to him largely. So much so that I may read a portion at the end of why Wolfram is doing what he's doing. So I read Chretein of Troyes, and I thought about making a video for that one, but I'm sure I'll go back and read the other 3 tales that are in those romances, and then I'll probably end up reading Titurel from Wolfram as well eventually. So anyways, I might just get like a little snippet of what's going on in Chretein of Troyes, and then I'll talk about my reaction to Wolfram. So Chretein of Troyes follows the story of Parzival, and I actually like his version of Parzival's origin story better. Just the beginning, where Parzival is a fool, is an absolute fool. At some point, he meets a kind of nameless knight, really, the first couple of pages, and asks him, what is this thing called? And he's like, a shield, And then at some point, he asks him, are you God, And then after that, he asked him if his armor, like, was he born like this? And he, like, as if he's a turtle or something, And the knight's like, no, I don't know get away from me, fool, And it's kind of from that moment that Parzival goes through this life of encountering difficult and strange things because he's so naive. He's like the ultimate innocent. And there's something I think wonderful about this, about what does an education mean, and how to create a mind and how to create a person and how to educate them sufficiently to be prepared for the many problems that a person faces. And so I loved it for that. And then it goes through Parzival. Parzival goes up to the Grail, meets the Fisher King. It's much stranger in Chretein of Troyes. It feels like this kind of like dream logic, the way the story is told. And what I like about that type of storytelling is that it just sort of like insists upon itself and sort of like this. I don't know. This is what happened. There's no reason for any of this. It's just like you just have to take it at face value. Wolfram is aware a bit more of what he's doing and why he's doing it, or maybe Chretein of Troyes, just because of its aged past, hides those things better. I'm not sure. So Wolfram is very aware of what he's doing and wants to be doing what he's doing, and seeks to finish the story that Chretein dies before he's able to finish. So then the story switches in Chretein to Gawain, and Gawain's kind of running through the world. And then from that, it doesn't switch back to Parzival, at least not until the very end, and we're about to take part in this joust for kind of strange reasons, and then the story ends. So I could see why Wolfram wants to finish the story. And he does, and I think he does it in a very satisfying way. And so I'm glad that, sometimes these things don't go that way, especially now with, movies and remakes and stuff. It doesn't quite all the same, legacy isn't held. But suffice it to say, Wolfram does a wonderful job, and he tells a very similar story, fleshes out so many things. In the places where he decides to add color, I think all sound true, all strike me as true, or that this is of equal legendary work that as what Chretein is doing. And so the same story happens where Parzival is this innocent, um, and then he fights the Red Knight and kills him. Aether, as by Wolfram's account, meets Arthur and Guinevere, does the same kind of like continues to fight people, and doesn't understand how sort of doomed he is. Wolfram does a little bit of moralizing with like, okay, the death of Aether kind of set up the cursing from Anfortas. He gives that the Fisher King a name, and which I think I like for Chretein's version, that it's just like that he didn't know and that was bad. But anyways, so Wolfram brings him through this circumstance where he's meets a Fisher King, doesn't ask the question, and then is cursed. He goes and is kind of like banding about in the wilderness, finds a goose that's being attacked by hawks, sees the 3 dots of blood in the ground, in the snow, and is kind of dazzled by this. And there's a footnote in the Penguin version of this that it refers to Parzival as the Shattered Man or the Shattered Knight. And as I encountered that, it just sort of flooded me with these questions that I have about the legacy of this story. It's kind of an archetypal story of the Shattered Man, and what that might look like throughout the history of literature, especially Western literature. I'll just leave that there because I don't have an answer to it. But it was this kind of trick of phrasing that I thought like, oh, hold on, like that's something, and I want to know quite a lot more about that. And if Parzival is the sort of her version of that story, as I think about Don Quixote, at the end of Don Quixote is the shattered knight, Robinson Crusoe, Victor Frankenstein. These sorts of characters can continuously kind of reemerge, and it's different than like, oh, they had something bad happen to them. There's something a little bit more like intentional about this character and the way in which he's perceived. And so at the end of Wolfram's story, Parzival becomes the king of the Grail, and works the rest of his life to protect the Grail. It's very short. The ending of that is very short. He has a brother, which I don't know how to pronounce his name. I was saying Farfez as I was reading it. Lots of weird names in this book. Grandma Plans and all these sorts of things. Ogrecell. What was the lady's name? Oh, anyway. So, but the malevolent mistress was as actually as referred to in Chrétien. Not Wolfram doesn't refer to her as that. But anyways, for all that to say, it's a beautiful book. It took me a long time to read. I wanted to read it by the word because I was very interested in the phrasing and the ways in which things are, the real like nuts and bolts construction of the story, instead of listening to it as I might sort of miss some of those finer points. But it took me a very long time to read, and so I'm very, very glad for it to be done. So, anyways, it will make the list as something I think that as a reader of Western literature, I think you have to contend with Arthurian romances, and I would do it in the order I've done it so far, with Chrétien and then Wolfram, and then later Mallory. You may throw in Bede or Gregory of Malmouth as sort of background, or maybe there's a Welsh document that's in the list that kind of gives background on the Grail, I guess. But so far as I know, it seems like that's kind of the order, and I'm glad to have kind of really invested in this canon in the way that I have. So. Okay, I'm going to pull a new one from the list. I think I'm still kind of hovering above 1,000 here with the 1013. We're going to see what we get. 784. Bottom of the list. Rabelais Gargantua, which is 1,000 pages. There is no rest for the weary in this process. Okay, well, here I go again. So until next time, bye.